Our New Testament text for this morning comes to us from the Gospel of Matthew. We hear from chapter 2, the first 12 verses, or 15 verses actually. Listen now with me for the word of the Lord. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Now after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." This is the word of the Lord. We'll leave the light on for you. The ad began running in 1986 after David Fowler, creative director for the Richards Group, a marketing and ad agency based in Dallas, Texas, was driving down the road listening to NPR and heard the voice of Tom Bodett. Bodett was making his living building houses in Alaska, but he had a side job with NPR. He was a humorist on the program, All Things Considered. So when Fowler heard Bodett's voice, he knew it would be a great voice for an ad campaign. Humble, humorous, and that ad campaign for Motel 6 was born. The 6 comes from the $6 that it cost to stay there in 1962. The price has gone up, but that folksy, humble chain lives on, and so do the ads. 32 years later, and Tom Bodett still lets us know, "We'll leave the light on for you." We'll leave the light on for you. It's reassuring, it's humble, it's welcoming, it's homey. Today is Epiphany Day, January 6th, when we celebrate the 12th day after Christmas. This holiday reaches back to the origins of the Christian church, early records. The word epiphany literally means manifestation or showing or revealing. This is the day we celebrate that God has shown God's self to us in Jesus Christ, that God is revealed in Jesus. So this revelation has often been symbolized by light and stars because we need light in order to see what's being revealed to us. We'll leave the light on for you. Matthew gives us an epiphany story, the story of wise men who followed the light of a star to seek the revelation of God. God showed them something in Jesus, a baby born in Bethlehem. Likely the wise men came when Jesus was a little older, more likely a toddler. That's why he's called a child in this story instead of an infant. No longer an infant in a manger, but a little child living in a home with his parents. Matthew gives us this story. It's not included in Mark or Luke or John. But Matthew wants us to know about these wise men, these foreign astrologers who watched the sky for signs and symbols. These wise men looked for guidance and wisdom in the alignment of the stars in the night sky. Matthew isn't the first to tell a story about rich, wise travelers from the east coming. The plot for this story sounds a lot like Isaiah 60, our Old Testament reading. A poem recited by a prophet for the Jews in the city of Jerusalem around 580 BC. These Jews had been in exile for a couple of generations, and now they've returned to their home city of Jerusalem. They likely returned to a destroyed city of rubble, the kind of thing we might see on TV after a natural disaster or a hard-fought war. They were facing the debris of their own ground zero. Buildings torn down, economy failed, no one knowing what to do next. And in that context, an amazing prophet poet invites them to look up, to have hope, to expect change. Arise, shine, for your light has come. The prophet poet Isaiah gives them a vision of a Jerusalem as a place of prosperity and well-being, a place where others will be drawn to come to it. The prophet poet paints a picture of celebration and joy. Arise, shine, for your light has come. We'll leave a light on for you in Jerusalem. Then in Matthew, those wise astrologers, pondering the alignment of the stars in the sky, saw a sign, a light, the sign of a new king born. And when they saw the star, they allowed that light to guide them. They went to Jerusalem. They went to the capital city of Israel, to the seat of power, to the halls of government, to the religious center of Jewish faith where the temple stood once again rebuilt, to a city rebuilt like the hopeful words lifted up from that prophet poet Isaiah. Matthew makes it sound like the wise men arrived in Jerusalem and began asking around sort of to random people, where is this child who's been born King of the Jews? Where is this child? Word about their arrival made it to King Herod. Foreigners have shown up in the city and they're asking about a new king for Israel. Herod was frightened. Herod was threatened. In that time, when Israel was occupied by the Romans, a conquest of the Roman Empire, Herod was the Roman-appointed king of the Jews. His power depended on the Roman Empire. Some think Herod converted to be a Jew, and others say he masqueraded as a Jew in order to placate the people of his nation. But Herod was king of the Jews. The Roman emperor said so. The military said so. When foreigners show up in the city asking about a new king of the Jews, Herod was frightened. Herod was threatened. So Herod arranged a consultation of religious scholars. Tell me about this king of the Jews that's to come. Tell me about that prophet, poet Isaiah and the light that's to shine. Tell me what's happening. And the scholars told Herod that the king was to be born in Bethlehem, according to Micah chapter 5. But you, Bethlehem, from you shall come forth for me one who is to rule Israel. So Herod called in those wise astrologers and he told them. He was the one who answered their question. Where is the one who's born king of the Jews? Herod sent them to Bethlehem. Bethlehem. Herod told them to return and report back, claiming that he wanted to see this new king too, and he also wanted to worship him. We who can read ahead in the story know that Herod has no interest in worshiping this new king. He only wanted to destroy the new king. He wanted to remove the threat. He wanted to keep power. He wanted to manage his fear with violence. He wanted to extinguish the light that was shining from Bethlehem. In a horrific act of terror, in a scandalous case of genocide, Herod would use his power to order the death of every young child in Bethlehem. Well, the wise men traveled to Bethlehem, and they found Jesus, the Messiah, there. They worshiped him. They gave him gifts. And in a brave act of civil disobedience, they disobeyed Herod's order to return to him, and they went home by another road. Walter Brueggemann, Old Testament scholar, points out that Bethlehem is about 9 miles south of Jerusalem. And I wonder why those wise men were 9 miles off on their journey. Maybe using stars for navigation isn't as precise as a GPS. Maybe they were caught up in the memory of that prophet, poet, and arise and shine, the light has come, offering light to shine from the city of Jerusalem again. Maybe they went to the city that was a place where they expected people to know lots of things. The pinnacle of power, the center of faithfulness, the city where the King of the Jews lived. But they were 9 miles off. And I wonder if we should pay attention to those 9 miles. I wonder how often we're about 9 miles off in our spiritual navigation system. So where will we look for epiphany? Where will we look for God's light to shine? Where will we look for God to be revealed in the world? Where do we look for light when the time is dark and difficult? Where do we look for God? Where do we look for Jesus in our world? Do we naturally find ourselves going to places of power and worldly centers of faithfulness? Are we prone to drift, maybe without even thinking, toward the attention grabbers of the world? Are our eyes prone to fixate on the neon flashing signs of the world and miss maybe that star in the sky? Are we at the mall or at the office or looking at a screen? Where do we go? Where do we go for meaning? Where do we go for purpose? Where do we go for salvation? Where do we go for trust in a fearful time? Sometimes maybe we're a little off. But maybe God has revealed to us in places like Bethlehem, the humble places, the out-of-the-way places, the unexpected places, the not much going on kind of places. Among the least of these kind of places might be where the light is shining. We'll leave the light on for you. Tom Bodette said it for 32 years now. And today we, together, say it here. We say it for me, for you, for the world around us. We'll leave a light on for you. We'll keep the light on, pointing toward a true home, guiding us to the path of God, revealing to us what God is doing and leading us to where Jesus is. So whenever we're 9 miles off, come back and we'll give you directions. It's a role for faith community. It's a role for us in worship and education and ministry and service to redirect our lives and reorient again and again when we get a little off track, to be reoriented and redirected toward where Jesus really is. We'll leave the light on here for you. Amen.